Hi everyone. Welcome to the first of the Untapped Treasures series. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me before we get going. We have a lot to cover and we're going to try to get it all done in an hour. So if you have questions or comments, do feel free to put those into the question box. I have the one and only Karen Locker here helping to field those questions to make sure they all get answered. So to be sure, if for some reason we were to miss answering your question, those will come to me after the webinar and I will definitely follow up and make sure they get answered because I want you guys to be able to go out and find this glass and make a ton of money because it's there to be made because very few shall we call them pickers are out there actually really finding this glass. It's getting left behind. It's getting left behind in a lot of places and we're going to go into why you're able to find it at good prices to be able to resell it as one of the things. But I'm telling you, there is just it's an amazing resource of money to be made, and we're gonna hopefully get over all of your fears about why you're not currently selling this kind of glass if you're not. So this is one in what I'm going to be doing as a series, and we're going to do these through the end of the year, one a month. So be watching for those announcements in the newsletter that I put out on Fridays. And as well as over on the Facebook group, I'll be making those announcements as well. So today we're going to cover EAPG and American Brilliant Glass. EAPG is also known as Early American Press Glass or Early American Pattern Glass. And these two kinds of glasses go hand in hand, even though they're completely different. Their history is tied together, and that's why I put those two together today. Lots of similarities. The next one we're going to be doing is another favorite of mine is Murano and other Venetian glasses. Then we're going to do contemporary art glass. Then we're going to go into depression glass. Then there's other kinds of crystal and some Swedish glass and other clear glasses that also bring big money, and we're going to have a whole webinar on those. Then we're going to veer off glass and go into fine art, and we're going to divide this up into two different webinars. One is going to be paintings versus prints, and then after that we're going to do sculptures and other works of art. Then we're going to do antiques in general and then collectibles that bring big money. So we're going to cover it all. We're going to cover all those things that are often overlooked and making big profit margins. So today we are going to cover EAPG and American Brilliant. We're going to cover where to find it, how to identify it, how to price it, how to photograph it, how to list it, and how to package and ship it. So we're going to get you through the entire process from start to finish so that you have all the confidence in the world to just go out and find this stuff and make oodles of money with it. Okay, so where to find it? The most likely places that you are going to find the better glass are estate sales. Love estate sales for this because most organizers of estate sales do not know what this glass is unless and it was very appropriate that on the show Cash and Kari, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that show. She runs estate sales and it's a reality show based on her estate sales. And one of her last episodes was a family that had a huge collection of American Brilliant glass. And you could actually get a really good taste and feel for what you can find at estate sales. And even though her prices seemed really high to, the average person just watching that show, You will have noticed, and as soon as this comes out on her site, and you can watch this, I am going to be posting this because it's a fantastic episode for learning. There was a dealer that came and shopped from her and spent 9,000 some dollars and was tickled to death that she was still going to make a boatload of money after spending that much money. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that as soon as I have a link for that, I am certainly going to share that because it's just so appropriate with what I'm going to be teaching you today. So estate sales. Most estate sales are going to tuck this stuff in the kitchens. They're going to put it as decorative pieces in rooms, and it's often going to be very underpriced and overlooked. Okay. Um, Auctions. I have bought a lot of these pieces at auctions. And again, auctions generally go by what their consignor tells them something is. So you're going to want to definitely look things over and judge for yourself whether it truly is American Brilliant. Um, but they don't research. They don't look for signatures. They don't try to figure out what pattern it is. They just sell it generically as sometimes cut glass. So if you see an auction selling cut glass, a lot of times that's what they're going to call it. If they do know it's American Brilliant, you want to check it out because they're just going to generically call it American Brilliant most times, unless they know something specific from the consignor, but usually not, unless it's a really, really high-end auction and they've taken the time to do that. Um, Another place, flea markets or antique fairs, that type of thing. Same thing as estate sales. You know, it's going to be out there, and these are dealers selling things, but again, they don't know everything about everything. And usually glass that doesn't have a maker's name or label or signature on it, they're not going to know enough to price it accordingly. So you can find a lot of it there. Something else that I thought of just as I was starting the webinar also is antique malls. That kind of goes in line with flea markets and antique sales because those are the same people that usually have items in malls. Again, antique malls sounds like, you know, everything in there is going to be priced to sell for retail price, and I can tell you I have found many pieces that have gone overlooked. They didn't know quite what they are. So those are the most likely haunts for this type of glass. The less likely places to find it, although not impossible, just less likely, yard sales. While you can find it at yard sales, this is not generally where I find the pieces that I find. And thrift stores. So those are probably going to be your less likely places to find the better pieces of glass. Not impossible, just less likely. So in identifying it, I first want to give you a little history about this glass and how the two kinds of glass tie together. So this is the fascinating part for me because think about this. In the early 1800s, you had wealthy families here in America, and they've recently, you know, come over from Europe. It's you know, kind of newly settled still, and Europe was very well known for its fine cut glass, and families used that cut glass the way we use paper plates today. Let's face it. Uh, they didn't have other materials really to eat off of and use and have, you know, the fanciness. There was porcelain and fine china, and then there was glass, and they loved this finely cut glass from Europe, and they were importing it over. So your everyday family could not afford this type of glass. So this actually led to two different things. It led to the American Brilliant glass, which is basically cut glass that's now made in America, and these were copied from the European glass makers, you know, but it was more affordable because they didn't have to import it. And even one step lower than that was the pressed glass. And the pressed glass molds, the invention of this was in the 1820s. So this is about when the EAPG started to be produced. And this was now affordable for the everyday family, call them, the middle class family of today. And now they could have these good looking pieces of glass on their tables as well. So that is how the EAPG came about. So the American glass cutters were producing the patterns that copied the Europeans, and this was done before the 1850s, but it was really in the 1850s that they started to be a little bit competitive on coming up with some new designs and things, and they got gutsy and actually sent their glass pieces over to the European shows and fairs to compete. They were like world fairs, I guess you would equate them to. And this is where they won some ribbons and started to become acceptable to the European communities. And now the Europeans wanted to import some of the American products, and this was the beginning of what's called the American Brilliant period. Because it's not that it was first invented, it's just that this is when it really gained popularity, and now it was all the rage. This went on until the start of World War I. And what happened about that time was the lead that was used in the glass that produces the intense clarity and the weight and all the things that make it look the way it does. This lead was needed for ammunitions and for weapons for the war. So that's when the period ends. So there's different types of EAPG. And you don't really need to identify what type is what, but it does help to know when you're looking because the first type, called flint glass, is a type of glass that it's just and this is with EAPG. Now we're talking specifically EAPG. This flint glass is made with a powdered flint, which soon went into lead, which produces that really just that clarity that's we hear crystal clear. This was produced from the 1820s through the 1860s, and interestingly enough, they stopped the use of lead because of the Civil War, and the same reason that the American Brilliant ended up stopping using the lead later, as that it was needed for ammunitions and weapons. So flint glass is a EAPG that was produced before the 1860s, and you can tell it because it's just so much clearer than some of the later pieces. There are opalescent glass that are also EAPG, and we're going to go into this type of glass more extensively later because it is a whole nother type of glass unto itself, but it's also in that EAPG category. Custard glass. This was first produced around 1885, and you'll know it because it's got that creamy yellow color that looks like custard. It's often got painting on it as well, so that's one of the ways to know you've got custard glass. And you can also call this EAPG. It was made during that period. Lacy glass was actually the first glass products that were made in EAPG, and we know them as sandwich glass, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of this. It's called sandwich glass because of the name of the company that started it was the Boston Sandwich Glass Company. It was heavy, thick, and crude, and was not made in sets or patterns. So that is one of the determining factors when you are looking at pattern glass. It should absolutely not be perfect. And of course, milk glass. I think we all know what milk glass is. Now, when it was first made back in the 1830s, it was much thinner than some of the milk glass that we see nowadays. It's often known as fiery opalescent even because it has sort of that shimmer effect to it when you hold it up to the light. It was actually produced to substitute for fine porcelain. It was made to look like porcelain. Um, you'll definitely will know the older stuff compared to the newer milk glass when you see it. Like I said, you can almost see through it. Okay, so how to price it? So you find some of these pieces and you're going, gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to price this stuff and how to list it. That kind of falls into this same subject header here. So of course it's best to know your pattern. If you know a pattern, much easier to do your research, much easier to uh, know what words to use. And I will tell you, if you plan on getting into this type of glass, this is my EAPG Bible right here. I have several books that I use for glass, and I can tell you that this is my most used. In fact, I think I have like 3 copies because I wear them out. This book is phenomenal, and you can get it for under 10 bucks. Amazon, eBay, just look for Collector's Encyclopedia of Pattern Glass by Molly Helen McCain. This is the go-to book. It's all in black and white drawings, so she goes through and shows each little intricacy of the patterns so that you can spot what you have. And the book is divided up into different things such as birds and flowers, animals, people, circles. I don't have it in front of me either, which was really silly. But it's really, really easy to navigate based on a shape or a subject matter so that you can find what you're looking for. So knowing your pattern, always good. If you don't know your pattern, use what you know. So you search for similar design. Use some of the words that come to mind when you're looking at a piece, such as if it has a fruit or if it has people. I can tell you that I collect a pattern made by a company called Gillander, and it's called the classic pattern. Now, if you didn't know that and you just had this piece of glass and you were listing it as a seller, you would say that it had 2 main things, and I actually have these as saved searches so I find these pieces. Log feet, because the little feet on it are in the shape of logs, and they have neoclassical figures, which a lot of times are semi-nude women. So I actually have nude glass as one of my search terms, and I find a lot of this glass. So if you have something like that, collectors will find it as well. I find those pieces in my collection and they still go up to the same prices, much to my dismay. I have not been able to really steal any of those pictures when they have some of those keywords in there. And then the rule of thumb, of course, is the more rare the piece, the higher the price. So these glass sets came in different patterns, and I was trying to find, I made a note, and do you think I can find it right this second? Of course not. But you had table sets, and within those table sets, let's say you would have like a basic 4-piece table set included a covered sugar, a creamer, a covered butter, and a spooner. And for those that don't know, a spooner is, it kind of looks like a drinking goblet, although it's bigger. And what that was used for is it was not practical for each person at the table to have their own spoon. And so the spoons were put in the middle of the table in one of these spooners. And then when you needed a spoon, you just reached over and you got a spoon out of the spooner. But they just look like, in fact, here's one on this picture right here. This is a spooner. There was berry sets. So berry sets included what's called a master berry bowl, and then you would have 4 to 6 sauce or berry dishes that were smaller and of the same shape. There were water sets, which would include a water pitcher and tumblers and or goblets, and sometimes a water tray or what's called a waste bowl. Um, then there's more extensive patterns that include things like celery vases. Same thing as the spooner, only bigger, and they actually put the celery into the celery vase. Milk pitchers, bowls of all sizes, compotes, wine and champagne goblets, cordials, salt dips, what are known as master salts, which are larger than the little individual salt dips, shakers, mustard jars, sugar shakers, toothpicks, egg cups. There's things called spill holders, celery or relish dishes, cups and saucers, mugs, cake stands, bread plates. Then, of course, there's dinner plates, bread plates, dessert plates, decanters, cruets. There's just about every piece you can imagine in some of these sets. And depending on the pattern will depend on what pieces there are available. So the later we got into the EAPG period, uh-oh, come on. There we go. Ha ha ha. Made it happy again. Phew. Just love when that happens, huh? Okay, where were we? So we were discussing all those pieces. See, it was just telling me to stop talking about all those pieces. So there's pieces. And later into the EAPG period, they made more extensive sets. So the earlier was more the basic functional pieces. And as manufacturers caught on to how they could market and sell these, then of course, then they made more and more pieces. There's actually about 3,000 different patterns out there. There's hundreds of glass factories. So this is a rule of thumb. Out of those 3,000 patterns, most of them just have a few pieces. There's about 1,000 of the patterns that have extensive sets. So that kind of narrows it down for you, right? Really, you're going to want to concern yourself with different shaped pieces, things like lamps and punch bowls and larger bowls and whimsy pieces. Those types of things tend to sell for higher prices than, say, a small celery bowl or even a spooner. And we'll take a look at some of those results in just a minute. This thing has me scared again. Okay, so also something I want to go back to the identification that I wanted to make sure you knew. Pressed glass was made in 2, 3, or 4 section molds. What that means is that you will have seam lines, mold lines. Remember, these were cheaply made products. It was, I guess you could consider it the equivalent of what you'd go to Walmart, and get. And how you can tell Walmart quality products from, say, going to Tiffany's or Macy's or one of the high-end department stores. So it was the same was true with this type of glass. It was crudely made. It was not fine glass. So you're going to see that when you are finding this glass. It could have little bubbles within the glass. It can have what are known as straw marks. And what straw marks are, they almost look like a crack, but they're not. This is not a crack. And what it is when these pieces of glass were made, they were, the hot molten glass was put on and I'm trying to remember the name of the little doohickey. The glass maker basically he dips this pole into a pot of hot molten glass, and kind of think of it like a honey jar. There we go, a honey jar. So he's got this blob of glass that then goes into the mold. And when that is cut off, when that blob of glass is sheared off from that pole when it's going into the mold, it gets what's called a shear line. And as the glass expands and kind of forms, it leaves that little line in there. You can feel it. You can put your thumbnail in and you can actually feel it and you're going to think crack, but it's not. And it's known in the collector world as a straw mark, and it's completely acceptable. Okay. Now there are a couple of things that you do want to stay away from. Those would be, let's see if that's in my next slide. See, that green screen got me all out of sorts. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and go here. So your best sellers are going to be colored pieces, and it will come in all different colors, but this is an area that can get a little tricky of knowing what is reproduction, what's newer, and what's actually EAPG. So while this is higher selling glass, for purposes of this webinar, I want you to learn about the clear stuff, okay? So of course, the larger the better on pieces, and sets such as punch bowls, lamps, pitcher and cup sets, those can sell for some crazy high prices. And you'll notice some similarities on some of these. Now, this is an exception to the rule also when it comes to the pattern. Normally, I would say go for patterns with animals and figures on them. But in the case of larger pieces, such as punch bowls, lamps, and large pitcher and cup sets, you can go ahead and go for those geometric patterns that mimic the American Brilliant and the cut glass. Examples of some of the patterns. Now this is that one I was telling you about. This is the pattern that I collect called the classic pattern, and you can see this nice topless lady there. I guess they ran around without clothes on back then. But it's got all these neoclassical figures. There's guys that are carrying archery sets and types of things, yes. And then there are patterns that actually have things like dogs as their finials. And those are really good sellers. This is another pattern that I collect. This is called Deer and Dog because on the actual etching around here is a scene with hunters going after deer, which is a little gruesome, but it's a very, very rare pattern. So if you find pieces of that, you'll do good. I have sold other pieces in the past. You might remember a picture that I sold last year that was called The Fox and the Crow, or Aesop's Fables. It was a company that made only that picture, only that one piece. One piece. Yeah, and I do not have a picture of that straw mark, but thank you, Christy. That is something that I will add. I will have a reference page after this webinar that you can refer to, that I'm going to list all my resources as well as some more pictures as I gather them for you. So some things that you want to avoid are, like I was saying, the plain patterns with just geometric shapes. There's tons and tons of that out there. Those you will find at the thrift stores and at yard sales and those sort of things. But generally those are not good sellers. Smaller, more common pieces, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. Damaged pieces, and within the realm of damaged pieces, there is something called purpled glass. And you will hear a lot of people talking about this pretty sun-purpled glass. And I can tell you, this is my little soapbox I have to get on as a glass collector. This is damaged glass. It's ruined forever. The only people this will appeal to is people who just like pretty purple glass, which means the collectors who spend the real money, who really want to pay to have those pristine pieces in their collection, are not going to pay for these purple pieces. So it's truly damaged glass. It's not a good thing. And glass collectors absolutely cringe at the thought of purpled glass because it's ruined forever. And the reason it gets purple is it's exposed to ultraviolet rays, usually from the sun, although now it's done artificially for the purple glass market. And there's magnesium and other minerals in the glass that react to that ultraviolet rays and causes it to turn purple. So we don't like purple. Now there are some patterns that are known to have a lot of reproductions out there. And I am going to show you which those are so you can stay away from them. So the first one is called Westward Ho. They're pieces that have like American Indians and cowboy type things, buffalo. There's a whole lot of these pieces out there, and there is a lot of reproductions. I don't even touch this pattern. Don't even touch it. There's just too much of it. And another one is called three face. And all these little pieces that have stems, they have three faces around them. And again, this is another one that there are ways to tell the authentic from the reproduction, but you really have to study it. Really have to study it. So for me, it's not worth it because there's too many of the pieces out there kind of clogging up the market and driving prices down unless you can absolutely 100% verify that a piece is authentic. Now, I did learn a little something just in the preparation of this webinar. If you do find a piece of the Westward Ho that has the finial with this little Indian guy on the top, here's the clue. The authentic piece, he has a little Adam's apple at his throat. They didn't do this for the reproduction. So if your little finial guy on top has an Adam's apple, it is an authentic piece. So if you get a piece of that and you're listing it, make sure you take a close-up of that. That's going to bring you the big bucks on that piece. I thought, gee, that was interesting. This is actually like the definitive guide for the Westward Ho pattern. This guy wrote the book. It's called Westward Ho Pattern Glass, and you can find this over on eBay if this is a pattern you wanted to learn more about. So here's some examples of pieces of the EAPG that you really want to kind of stay away from. This is just an eBay search of completed listings today, and I sorted by price plus shipping lowest first. So I don't want to see you guys selling $2 pieces of glass. Just not worth your time and the packaging materials and all of that. But you can see there's some pretty common pieces. They don't sell for much. Kind of plain, not real exciting. And you can do this search yourself and kind of see the items to stay away from. They have just, you know, little geometric patterns. They're smaller pieces, ordinary stuff. Now, every once in a while, there'll be a piece that got thrown in here, and this could be an arbitrage opportunity. But for the most part, you want to stay away from those smaller pieces. Now, let me show you just the opposite. The pieces that are bringing the big bucks. Okay, so again, you get to pieces that have some type of animal, figural. This one has ships. This is the lid only, guys. Lid only on this pattern. You noticing that? Can you imagine if this was the whole butter dish? Bunnies. This one is an opalescent set, but you see this is a master berry and then the berry dishes that go with it. Bringing home the cows. Uh-oh. Okay, guys, I didn't know that this was a pattern that existed. I could be in trouble. I'm going to definitely have to look into that one. But you can see the animal patterns are way up there. Way up there. Children's sets. There's children's plates and children's tea set, you know, pieces. Lots of children's set. There's the deer and dog again. Again, here's a pitcher and cups. Oil lamps. So you can see the pieces that you want to get your hands on. Anything that has animals and figurals or is an unusual piece. Okay. I'm very scared that my computer's gonna do the little crash on me again. Whew, okay, we got back. Okay, so let's go on to American Brilliant. American Brilliant. So a lot of the same things apply when you're out looking for it, except for the pattern types. So the way to identify American Brilliant, you guys probably have heard me say this a whole bunch of times. It is sharp, 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 sharp. I can't stress that enough. When you hold these pieces in your hands will actually almost ache from holding them. The night that I did the show, the Ask the Danni App show from Janelle Elm's house in Seattle, and I was handling all of these pieces of glass, my hands were actually tired after that show. This is sharp. And if you have to question, is this what Danny's talking about it being sharp? Then it probably isn't. It is something that you will know. Almost 100% you will know without question that you have American Brilliant in your hands when you are holding it. Okay? It's that sharp. Sharp, sharp, sharp. It has amazing clarity. Again, it has the lead in it, which gives that same clarity that the flint glass EAPG does. So if there's cloudiness or fogginess, it is probably not a piece of American Brilliant. And it's thick and heavy. It's usually 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick. You figure that they had to take what's called a blank, which is the piece before any cuts are made. So they took this blank piece of glass, and every one of those little cuts is hand done. And they had to, they didn't have fancy machines and tools like we do nowadays. They had to do it all with water and wood, or how they cut the glass. Can you imagine getting through doing a piece like this, getting to the last couple of cuts and breaking it? Can you imagine how many times that happened? So yes, it will always, always, always be thick glass, and it has lead in it, guys. It has lead in it, so it is going to be heavy glass. This particular piece right here weighed about 7 pounds. This is one of Janelle's pieces. This is about an 8-inch diameter bowl. Very, very heavy. So it has motifs, unlike the EAPG that was known for different patterns of people and animals and that kind of thing. Because this was all hand cut, everything was done in little straight lines. If you find pieces that actually have curved lines, you've got something really good, because doing curved lines was really, really hard to do. Really hard to do. So, and I'm just going to go through some of these and then point you in the direction to get more information on each individual one. So these are some of the common terms: buzz saws, fans, pinwheels, canes or caning, Brunswick star. Actually, this right here is a Brunswick star. And I don't know if I put Hobstar on this list. I'll get to that in a second. Cross hatching. See how cross hatching is some of this little fine stuff in here. Bullseyes. There's Hobstar is actually inside here, and they make these cuts by themselves, and then a Brunswick star is when one of these is within this larger star here. Oh, and it goes on. We have arcs, notches, ferns and feathers, thumbprints, hexads, prismatic cuts, blaze or fringe. And again, this is just a partial list actually, but knowing these motifs can come in really handy, because again, just like in the EAPG with people looking for particular patterns based on things like I put in log feet, people will put in some of these different names. And I'm going to show you a site that I absolutely love. This is brilliantglass.com If you guys want to take note of that, there is so much information on this particular site. It's crazy. But one of the things they have on this site, let me just show you. They have the cutting houses. And let me find, see, I closed things and had to like open it back up. All right, now. There we go. It was under the guide. If you go here, cut glass motifs, this goes through every single motif and gives you examples if you want to look more into that, or if you get a piece and then you want to go and reference this to see what you have. This is the site to do it. This is my go-to site, so I wanted to pass that on to you. All right. And again, how to price it. Now, again, there's lots of resources out there. This is one of my favorite books, Collecting American Brilliant Cut Glass. Has lots of great pictures in it, but there's lots of them out there. You're probably never going to find the patterns. There's very few patterns that I ever even bother to try and find. Every once in a while you get lucky, but let me tell you, your eyes will start crossing looking at these different patterns because they all incorporate the same types of motifs and shapes, just in different ways. So something you want to look for is the fancier the cuts, the better. The more of these different motifs they use within the same piece, the better. That will add the value to it. Larger pieces are better. Punch bowls, the really large bowls, lamps, large vases, those types of things can sell for thousands of dollars. And don't be afraid to price it high if you're not sure. Like I said, you know, collectors love to come along and find something and either let you know you're out of your mind because you have that price too high and then tell you what you have, or they'll come in and make you an offer. And that's usually pretty good with us too. Okay, how to photograph it. Because this is a stumper for a lot of people. And I'm going to try something I have never tried before. I actually have another little slideshow to show you guys. If I can make this work. I think I can. There we go. So this is actually the setup that I used at Janelle's house when I went up there. This is not my normal setting, and I didn't want to just give you my normal setup because I wanted to show you that it's fairly easy to photograph this no matter where you're at if you have some of the right equipment. So this is a fairly inexpensive little photography box and lights that you can get on eBay. This is inside of a closet on a couple little tables, so nothing fancy or expensive here. The black backdrop is one of the keys, and this is a material that does not reflect the light back, and that's really important. You want a material that absorbs the light and doesn't bounce it back off and give you some weird glares. And this is me actually taking the pictures, and you can see the diffused light coming in by using of the box, and it just glows enough off of the piece. And these are the pieces that I already used in this PowerPoint, so you saw how the pictures turned out. Okay, just some more shots. I'm just taking pictures of all sides of the piece. So you want to turn it, even though it looks the same on all sides, you want to turn the piece as if you're looking at it at the store. Just turn the piece on all sides and snap a picture. Take some close-ups. If there's any damage, you will usually have little tiny slivers of damage. It is a velvet or velveteen type of fabric, and usually it comes with these little photo studios if you're buying these. A matte vinyl will also work. Even though it's vinyl, you don't want to use shiny vinyl. If you use a matte vinyl, that works as well. I've used that a lot. You want to take a picture of the bottom. Now, some of these pieces will be signed. Very, very hard to find a signature. I'm going to show you what one looks like in just a second. But usually they're not signed because when they were making this, they did not want people to know that they were copying European makers. Now this was a bigger piece that didn't fit in the little photo booth, and I can show you here how I was just using the lights shining on it. And it really brings out the clarity in these pieces. Unlike some things that you can't use the light, I did some porcelain after this. It didn't turn out as good with the lights shining directly on it, but this works fine for this type of glass. Sometimes you want to pick it up, angle it so you can get a certain something, you know, that you need to catch on it. This particular piece had a crack, so actually it's not a price tag off to the side there. This was a numbering system that we used because there was so many pieces that looked similar, and I was not going to be up there to help her figure out which was which. So we numbered each piece and put that within the listing, so in one sells, she knows which one it is. So we took the picture first with that number and went from there. Again, this is just me finding different things that needed to be a close-up taken. And that's it. Now I also want to show you one of the appsters here. Okay, and I'm going to go try and find. I got permission to show you guys an amazing photo album. All right, so discovered this through this wonderful punch bowl that one of the appsters has. I'm going to pull that up. You can see she takes the pictures on a black plexiglass base, which makes that little reflection down there that's just enough to really add to these pictures. But all of her pictures are just absolutely phenomenal. As you can see, this is her photo album and all of the glass that she's taken pictures of, and I'm telling you, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Just makes the glass look phenomenal. And I go into Picasa, which is a free program. Usually just using the auto contrast feature will be enough to make the glass pop. Sometimes you need to go in and give it just a little bit more contrast or a light and adjust it a little bit, but very easy to work with contrast when you have clear glass because you're not changing any color, you're just bringing out the details. So it's very hard to do any damage to a picture as far as making it what it's supposed to be. Get back to there we go. Okay, how to package and ship it. As I know this scares a lot of people. And I want to thank bubblefast.com for letting me use their pictures. Told them I'd give them a little plug. Oops, come on now. Okay, so you've sold the piece now for $1,000 and you are scared to death, right? No worries. So the first thing you're going to do is use either small bubble, which I think most of us have, or foam. I like the 1/8 inch foam. This is what I use on all my expensive collectibles, breakables, before I use another layer of larger bubble. And the reason I do the 2 layers is the first layer with either small bubble or foam gives it that first little layer of cushion, and then when you use the larger bubble, there's no areas that you can feel through it. And that's one of my criteria, is make sure you cannot feel the piece at all through the cushioning. You don't want to feel any edges. You want it to be completely cushioned. Okay, so in your first box where the piece is going to go, you're going to have 2 to 3 inches of peanuts on all sides of the piece, and you're going to pack it firmly in there so that when you close the box and shake it, you don't want to hear any movement. You want to actually overstuff it with peanuts so it It leaves for some settling and for some squishing of the peanuts. Then you are going to put that box into a larger outer box and have 1/2 inch to 1 inch of peanuts all around on that box. So that's going to give you extra cushion. It's going to leave for any type of crushing that could happen if it were dropped, and that's the key to double boxing. 2 to 3 inches on the inside, and I tell you, the more expensive the piece, the thicker I put the cushioning. I don't want anything getting to it. And then another 1/2 to 1 inch on the outer box. Okay, and mark it fragile. I do mark my breakable pieces as fragile, and I know a lot of people say that that just tells them to kick it around more, and it simply isn't the case, guys. I mean, it's nice to think of them doing that. But it's not the case. It is the equipment, it is the process that the boxes go through. And here's something to keep in mind. Ship either USPS priority, or if it's an oversized piece like a large punch bowl or something large that's just going to make the priority price skyrocket, either use UPS or FedEx. The key is don't ever use parcel select or parcel post, because what happens when you ship parcel select or parcel post is it gets transferred from station to station to station, and every time it is transferred it goes through the sorting process. And for parcels, that sorting process means that your box with your highly breakable punch bowl that's worth $3,000 is getting dropped off of a conveyor belt into a bin with other packages of similar size, but that can weigh up to 70 pounds. 70 pounds is the weight limit for parcel select. I'm getting used to calling it parcel select now. So just keep that in mind. Do you want a 70-pound package falling on top of your $3,000 punch bowl? That's why I will never, ever, 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 ever use parcel. So if it can't go USPS priority for a good price, then I do go with UPS ground. UPS ground is not as good as like UPS 3-day select, but it's affordable, it's trackable, and it's insurable every step of the way. I am going to make a video showing this process that will be up on my YouTube channel, ASAP. So if you want to watch for that, there is my YouTube channel URL, where I'm putting lots of this kind of stuff over there. All right, now you're ready to find and sell some high profit glass, right? Did I miss any questions? I see I had a question about which is better, auction or fixed price for glass. I can tell you, unless you are willing to risk letting a piece go for a very, very cheap price, I go fixed price. Because if you start things in auction format for what they're actually worth, nobody will bid. It's crazy. This is just historically what I've found. Case in point, Tim Chapman, Mr. Customer Service, had a really, really nice piece of Steuben glass recently. And he tried it at auction twice, if not 3 times, could not get anybody to bite. As soon as he put it on fixed price, he had 3 offers, and boom, he sold it for $4,000. So glass collectors are kind of funny that way. When we see it, we want to buy it. We don't want to wait for it unless it's starting really, really cheap and we get tempted. Have I found American Brilliant glass on eBay to arbitrage? I would veer away from doing that. The reason being, American Brilliant, you really need to put your hands on it. You really need to feel it to make sure you've got the real thing. So if you're going to arbitrage off of eBay, make sure that you're willing to get something that's pressed glass. No, the process that the lead goes through, the question is the lead poisonous that it's in the leaded glass? No, it's not. Because of the process that the lead goes through in the making of the glass, it does not leach out and you can drink from it. Oh, good question. So, I do everything with free shipping. Everything, everything. Even these big, heavy, heavy, heavy pieces. Um, so, when you are figuring out your shipping cost on your items, always figure in the actual shipping based on the weight and approximate size. And think about, is this something that you want to take down to your pack and ship place and have them kind of take care of it for you, or you're going to do it yourself? That'll make a difference. But generally add $25 at least for the packaging and handling of these items so that you can go have it done, or depending on whatever the place that you go to charges for them. Um, and one of the things to remember when you're selling the stuff, you should have such crazy good profit margins in it that you can pay somebody to go and package it up for you if you're still not comfortable with that. If you have an item that has stickers on the glass that say it has lead in it, it's not American Brilliant or EAPG. They were not putting stickers on things back in those days. So that's going to be newer leaded glass. There is contemporary crystal that's lead crystal, and that's what you're probably thinking of. Oh, good point. When you are taking pictures and using photography lights, it is best to be in a dark room and only use the light from your photo lamps if possible. Oh, absolutely. You want to insure it. Absolutely, absolutely. UPS, of course, you can purchase UPS insurance straight through them, and as well as FedEx. There are third-party insurance that you can also get, such as ShipSurance, ShipSaver, UPick, lots of third-party insurance, but you absolutely want to insure this expensive glass. I could do that. I can get the PowerPoint slides posted somewhere for you. Yeah, and we're going to go into through this series. If you're an appster, you're already locked in. You're going to get to go to all these webinars, but we will be talking about all the different types of glass. Yeah. So you're going to search places such as estate sales, auctions. Those are the best places to find this. Use resources. So you want to have a good book or take down some of those websites, to refer to. So the age of Google and the web is amazing, where we used to have to go to encyclopedias and look in books and things to find this stuff. Now we can just go to the web and find all this stuff. Price for the collector willing to spend the money. This is really, really key, guys. Do not be afraid to price this good quality glass what it deserves to be priced at. Remember, it's 150 years old and it's not made anymore. Once it's gone, it's gone. So there are collectors who will spend a lot of money to get these pieces and to preserve them. Photograph on black background and use contrast when editing. It's one of the key things to taking the pictures. Double box, mark fragile, and now go make some money. And if you're here today and you're not a member of the Danni app, um, that's one of the places, one of the resources you can go for help with your high profit items. And if you want to see all the benefits of membership, you just go to the danniapp.com. Got everything right over there. And as one of my appsters says, if you're not, why not? Oh, you guys are cute. So with that, guys, as I always say, go be profitable and make it fun. Thanks for attending the first in the Untapped Treasures series.